Meeting to order. Welcome to meeting number 99 of the House of Commons Standing Committee on Foreign Affairs and International Development. Today's meeting is taking place in a hybrid format pursuant to the standing orders, and therefore members are attending in person in the room as well as remotely through the Zoom application. I'd like to make a few comments. First of all, please do wait until I recognize you by name before speaking. Also, this room, as you're all aware, is equipped with a powerful audio system. Feedback events can occur. These can be extremely harmful to the interpreters, and I'd like to highlight that the most common cause of sound feedback is an earpiece worn too close to a microphone. With regards to a speaking list, the committee clerk has, as always, graciously done so, and we will endeavor to maintain that consolidated list to provide everyone an opportunity to ask questions. Now, pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee will proceed to a briefing on the war in Ukraine. I'd now like to welcome...
Mr. Chair?
Yes.
Could I bring up a point of order, please?
Yes.
Thank you. And I do apologize. I did talk to the ambassador beforehand. I did want to make a point of order very quickly before we get started because I think this is very urgent. And I had raised this with committee members last week and again on Monday, and I want to make sure that a decision is taken in public today. The Global Affairs sent us a letter and an annex about our motion to compel documents on arms exports to Israel. Given the urgency of this issue, I ask for the committee's consent to instruct the clerk today to put this letter and annex up on the public FAAE website. I would further ask that we, as a committee, take 5 minutes today in public to instruct Global Affairs Canada to do the following: that we understand that providing all documents from the 2006 and 2024.
This sounds like a motion. If you're asking the committee to do something, that does not sound like a point of order. It sounds like a motion, and a motion may not be made on a point of order.
This is a point of order because I am asking us to instruct the clerk. I'm providing details on that, and I think that it is very
Mr. Chair, precisely, that is not a point of order to ask anybody to do anything.
Ms. McPherson, as you know, we have set some time aside for committee business later in the evening. Given that we do have the ambassador here, would you be okay with us dealing with that?
My issue here is that we have tried to bring this forward, and this committee has not dealt with what was a motion that has already been approved by this committee. This committee already approved a motion demanding and compelling documents from Global Affairs Canada, and Global Affairs Canada has not provided those documents. Yes. So they have. So I would like to make sure that what has been provided is public, and that we have instructed the clerk to do that, so that that information is
could you do it in
public.
Committee business? That's all I'm asking you, Ms. McPherson.
Is committee business going to be public? Because we are getting so many questions from people who are very interested in the answers the government is providing to this, that I'd like to make sure that that's going to be in public, not in camera.
Is there a unanimous consent to do committee business in public? No.
Then I would like to go forward with my point of order.
Again, committee business is private, but you're saying that you're going to take up the ambassador's time and you're not willing to wait till the end of our...
I think this is very urgent, particularly considering what I see as backsliding by the government with regards to sending arms to Israel. I think that people are very interested in having an answer to this,
Chair.
And I think it's fair for us to make sure those documents are put above.
I think it's been made very clear that this is not a point of order.
Yes,
the order of the day is to listen to the ambassador, and this is therefore not a point of order. Thank you.
Can I please just ask that we instruct the clerk...
Would you concede that it's not a point of order?
No, it is a point of order. I'm asking the clerk to put documents that have been compelled by this committee
it's
up onto the website. It's not a point of order.
Would you concede that, Ms. McPherson?
I'd like unanimous consent to put the documents that we have received up on the website.
Can we deal with one issue first? Would you agree that it's not a point of order?
Mr. Chair, I would like the documents that were given to this committee made public.
I would appreciate it if you responded. That is not a point of order.
I would like unanimous consent by this committee to put the documents on the website.
Ms. McPherson, several members have pointed out it's not a point of order. I have informed you that it's not a point of order. It's not.
It feels very much to me, Mr. Chair, like the Liberals would rather not share that information. The information has been shared multiple times in other examples.
We do have
and the
rules.
fact that you are choosing not to...
We have rules of procedure here.
All right.
Correct?
Well, I guess I could challenge the chair. We could ask
Sure,
if that
absolutely.
could
If you'd
be-
like to do
if we
so,
could
that
consider
is
that as a point of order.
certainly an option you do have.
I think you need to understand that Canadians have every right to this information, and
We're talking about rules, Ms. McPherson.
it's very important that we put those those documents up and make
Yes,
them
Mr.
public.
Oliphant.
This is actually on a point of order. We have not had an opportunity to discuss whether or not they should go on, and there's an assumption from Ms. McPherson that we would disagree with them going on. That is not my point. And in fact, she may be surprised at our opinion, our position on that. My point is due process and good order and respect for the ambassador who is here. And that is why, if she would wait, she may be surprised by the government response to publishing those things. However, on matter of principle, I believe that we have a guest here who's our witness who has come here, and we should deal with that, and we should deal with this in committee business. And that is just basically the way our committee will function, or we become dysfunctional again.
I'm sorry, but I asked for unanimous consent to put these documents up and make them public. So without that, I will challenge the chair.
Point of order, Ms. McPherson, I'm afraid. So is everyone okay with us resuming the study? Thank you.
She challenged your decision, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
There's a vote
Let's
now.
have a vote on this. Yep, absolutely. So let's do it. Let's put it to the vote.
The question is, shall the decision of the chair be sustained? Mr. Galbraith?
Yes.
Mr. Oliphant? Yes. Madame Châtel? Oui. Mr. Zuberi?
Yes.
Dr. Fry? Yes. Mr. Chong?
Yes.
Mr. Hoback?
Yes.
Mr. Epp?
Yes.
Mr. Abouteif?
Yes.
Monsieur Bergeron? No. Ms. McPherson?
No.
That's 9 yeas, 2 nays.
Thank you. So now if we could proceed with our study of Ukraine. It's a great pleasure once again to have you before committee, Ambassador Kovalev. Thank you very much for being with us. You have indicated that you can remain with this committee till 6 p.m. We will want to take full advantage of that. So thank you for being here and for your opening comments. You have 5 minutes before we go to the members for questions. The floor is yours, Madam Ambassador.
Thank you. Dear Chair, honorable members of the committee, thank you for this opportunity for brief you today. First of all, I would like to thank you, Chair, for your recent visit to Ukraine on February 24th with the U4U group of members of the parliament with many countries who supports Ukraine. And I would like to thank you, Canada, for signing the security cooperation agreement with Ukraine during the visit of Prime Minister of Canada to Kyiv on the second anniversary of the full-scale invasion. This agreement was the first agreement with non-European country and the first in North America, and lays the grounds for the deep and comprehensive cooperation between our countries in defense and security field. Based on the G7 declaration which was adopted during the NATO Vilnius summit, already 7 countries signed such agreements with Ukraine, and 27 countries endorsed the G7 declaration. And more of the negotiations are happening now in Kyiv with the countries who are committed to have the long-lasting relations and security agreements with Ukraine. Let me brief you on the situation in Ukraine. Just for you to compare where it is, the distance between Halifax and Lviv is almost the same like the driving distance from Halifax to Victoria. So it's not so far away. Russia demonstrates its commitment for its war of attrition. Russian armed forces on Ukrainian territory amount now 470,000 personnel, and plus 33,000 of Rosguardia soldiers now on the temporarily occupied territory of Ukraine. Russia's this year's budget spends 40% of its budget on military and law enforcement, and is continued to build its military presence in Arctic. Russia already took all ammunition from Belarus. North Korea has already supplied around 1.5 millions of artillery rounds, and at least 24 North Korean ballistic missiles have been used by Russia in its attacks on Ukrainian cities and on Ukrainian territory. Iranian drones continue to hit critical infrastructure. The enemy uses 6 or 7 times more artillery shells a day than Ukrainian armed forces. Russian offensive operations, which started in October, have no strategic success. For this, over 5 months, Russia's loss in manpower exceeds 4,000 troops, and since the start of the full-scale invasion, over 426,000 of Russian soldiers. Russia's weapons, which are continued to be produced, immediately are supplied to the battlefield. In the same time, Western spare parts and Western technology, including Canadian, is still being supplied to Russia and its defense sector. Despite all of these efforts, Russia has no strategic goal achieved and no strategic gains. In the same time, even with the lack of ammunition and a delay of delivery of committed military support, Ukrainian forces are holding the line. Since February this year alone, Ukrainian armed forces shut down 15 Russian fighter jets. Ukraine has destroyed nearly 33% of Russian Black Sea fleet, and now is able to export grain and other goods through the seaports. And in January this year, the volume of this export reached the level of the pre-war. Ukraine's geographic position does not provide us advantage for our security. Our own military spending now exceeds 21.6% of GDP. And we invest in domestic production of weapons, including in partnership with the leading Western defense companies, and count on the military support from our allies. In the same time, over 300 billion Russian assets remain frozen in the Western capitals. And it's both morally right and legally possible to seize these assets and to transfer them to Ukraine. And we count also on Canada's support of this. Russia also demonstrates its further commitment to continue the terrorism. Just today, 5 people were killed in Kharkiv of another Russian missile attack. In Odessa, on 12th of March, 20 people have been killed by the missile strike in the residential building. And on the 2nd of March, 20 civilians, including 5 children, have been killed. Among them, 4-month-old Timofey and his mother, Anna. And mother was holding her son in her arms, trying to cover his body and to save his life. This is what happens every day in Ukraine. This is why air defense system and missiles for them are crucially needed to protect civilian population. And we need to hold Russia accountable. I thank members of the House of Commons for the unanimously adopted resolution on February 15 this year, which supports Ukraine NATO membership, returning of Ukrainian children, strengthening sanctions, confiscation of Russian assets, and bringing Putin and his criminal regime responsible for the crime of aggression. We are also grateful to Canada for the leadership in co-chairing the coalition to bring back Ukrainian children. This coalition was launched early in February this year, and just a bit more than the month, we have 33 countries who joined the coalition. Today, over 19,000 of Ukrainian children have been forcefully moved and illegally adopted, many of them by Russians. So we need to continue to work with Canada and the other allies to bring children back home. There could be more to say, but thank you for this opportunity. I tried to be in my 5 minutes and ready to answer your questions. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. We will start off with the questions. And the first member up is MP Chong. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Ambassador, for appearing in front of us today and for giving us an update on the situation in your country. I'd like to congratulate you and your government for concluding an agreement with the Government of Canada, the Canada-Ukraine Strategic Security Partnership. Conservatives support that agreement, and we believe it to be one that will strengthen cooperation in the area of security and defense between our two countries. So congratulations on that accomplishment. Ambassador, you mentioned in your opening remarks that Russia is firing 6 to 7 times the number of shells at Ukraine that compared to Ukraine's ability to fire back. This has been an ongoing theme in recent months, a lack of ammunition. What's your view on the 83,000 surplus CRV-7 rockets held by the Canadian Armed Forces? Do you believe that Ukraine's military could use those rockets? And how urgent is that need?
Thank you. Indeed, the ammunition is now one of the pressing things, and among all the NATO members and also all the members of so-called Rammstein group, which held the 20th meeting just yesterday, the question of coordinating efforts to supply ammunition to Ukraine is highly of the high importance, and we value the recent announcement of Minister Blair about the further funding to supply the artillery shells to Ukraine. And indeed, not only artillery shells, these are the missiles for the air defense, the missiles that you mentioned. Indeed, Ukrainian armed forces need them, and then they can use them. And this is also the thing that we are discussing with all of our partners, is also trying to use even those equipment which is in the process of decommissioning. We don't have much choice, but we already, I think, demonstrated for this last 2 years that we can use the technology, we can use the dedication of our engineers to make it working for the good cause. Thank you.
You mentioned 155 millimeter shells. Canada produces those shells, but production is essentially flat. Since before the war began, I believe some 3,000 shells a day are being produced. How many shells a day is Ukraine firing to defend its territory from Russia?
It's good if we would have at least 8,000 per day.
7,000 or 8,000.
That will make a huge difference.
7,000 or 8,000 155 millimeter shells. The chief of the defense staff in Canada recently testified in front of committee. A number of months ago that shell production has remained flat. That the government of Canada has not yet increased shell production in order to not only resupply our armed forces, but to provide ammunition for Ukraine's armed forces. So if Ukraine is firing roughly 6,000 or 7,000 shells a day, by extrapolation from your opening remarks, I take that to mean that Russia is firing somewhere in the range of 36,000 to 50,000 shells in the opposite direction every day. So the need is great, and the need to increase shell production, 155 millimeter shell production is urgent. Would you agree with that statement?
Indeed. The ammunition production and wrapping up the production is being discussed among all the allies. And we in Ukraine are also putting the efforts to build the production, including of the ammunition in Ukraine. Now, as you may be aware, the Czech Republic is taking the leadership to try to find whatever is possible and coordinate the efforts to supply the ammunition. European Union itself made a decision to supply ammunition to Ukraine and committed the money. So now it's also up to the defense industry to be also able to speed up the investment and the rapid increase of production, and also I believe for the governments and our partners to make this happening and to support the industries for this rapid increase of production.
Just one very quick question. The Canadian Armed Forces have surplus light armored vehicles. Do you want those light armored vehicles that are surplus?
It depends on what type of the vehicles, because there are different types, and there's are more kind of a discussion precisely on these models. But we also indeed value the armored vehicles that have been supplied to Ukraine. That's both all of them are produced here in Canada, and I just recently visited the facilities where they are produced, and there were a lot of, and we are really grateful to a lot of Canadians who work in these facilities and help to get those vehicles to Ukraine.
Thank you. We next go to Dr. Fry. Dr. Fry, you have 5 minutes.
Thank you very much, Chair. Welcome, Ambassador. I had the Canadian delegation to the OSCE-PA, and I hear at every single meeting and quite often on emails from your Ukrainian RADA parliamentarians who are there telling us and updating us on what is going on in Ukraine. And because of that, I have a concern that we are going to allow this war to go on and on and on, and then it will soon become like the Vietnamese War, a background noise that nobody's paying attention to. And we all know how important Ukraine's victory is to the rest of the world and to democracy, and I think this is important. I hate to call it a war. It's just an act of aggression, violent aggression by Russia. It's not a war. Ukraine didn't want to participate in this, and so I think we need to really support Ukraine. And so under that, I think I echo what my colleague, Mr. Chong, was asking about. Is Ukraine being given every opportunity it can to defend itself properly? And so I want to ask, I know the European Union gave 50 billion euros recently to Ukraine, but everyone is still waiting for the 60 billion from the United States to come forward. Is that hampering Ukraine in its ability to defend itself? That's my first question. I'm going to give you a second question, and then you can answer them all together. My second question is, the fact that so many Ukrainian men have left Ukraine, and I know this is a debate in the RADA right now about whether or not they should stop refugees and change the age of ability to fight in the war. Is Ukrainian men and Ukrainians, period, women included, have the ability to have enough armed forces of their own being trained by Canadians and others? Is that happening? Is that hampering their efforts? And the third thing I want to ask is the RADA is saying, should you stop refugees from leaving Ukraine? I don't know. That's a decision being discussed at the RADA. What's your opinion on that? And finally, sanctions. I know that sanctions are not necessarily working. I know that there's a trade route that goes through Kazakhstan into Russia. And so that really negates some of the sanctions that the rest of the countries are doing. How is that impacting Ukrainians' ability to win this war when these sanctions are not working and Russia continues to be able to do this with impunity? Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for all these robust questions.
You have 2.5 minutes to answer this question, please.
Just to start with, I think we all understand that the strategy of helping Ukraine one drop at a time no longer works. And you saw the news when Ukrainian forces made a decision to withdraw from Avdiivka, which does not give actually Russia any of the gains except for PR to so-called, I don't know even what I can call it, the elections there. But in reality, that was because of the lack of ammunition. And that's also one of the pressing needs if we are talking about the new recruits to Ukrainian army. So there are a lot of men who already are fighting for 24 months. And in order to prepare, equip, and train new people, there need to be the resources, there need to be the capacity. So today, on the speed of not only the decision-making, but the implementation of those decisions, specifically to supply Ukraine with so needed military support. This will define the next months ahead, how the war will continue. If you look on what's happening with the Russian Navy fleet, particularly those who were situated in occupied Crimea, 33% of that was already destroyed. And it's not only the war on the ground. as I mentioned about the fighter jets, there's also a lot of war about the technology, and Ukrainian. We also are developing our own technology, and here. The agreement that we signed, Ukraine and Canada signed, it's also about the cooperation in defense industries, in defense technologies, which make both of our countries stronger, because we can be stronger when we share our know-how, when we share our components, but not sharing it with Russia. So we always and very quickly inform our partners when we are finding the spare parts of the Western, produced in the Western countries in Russian weapons. And there are also the Canadian companies who produce the spare parts that we found in the Russian weapons. And unfortunately, it's happening, we see it 2 years. Okay, like first year, there was some argument that this was a big stock. 24 months, Russia continued to produce, and the spare parts continue to be there. So we believe that the circumvention of sanctions is of an interest to deal with the circumvention of sanctions is the interest for our common interest. Because it's not only what Russia is fighting in Ukraine. For Canada, is also where everybody is watching is Russia building its military presence in the Arctic. So all of these defense equipment which Russia is putting there, it's also, Russia can't produce it without the Western spare parts. We see it as we are finding it in a debris, and that needs to be a responsibility. Those companies who are making it, there need to be the proper investigation on how it turned out to be in Russia and what measures, both from the governments and the companies itself, need to be done to avoid it. Sorry.
That was a lot of questions. Thank you, Madam Ambassador. We next go to Mr. Bergeron. You have 5 minutes, sir.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Madam Ambassador, for being with us tonight. Yesterday afternoon, the Canada-Ukraine Friendship Group invited a special envoy of President Macron to help rebuild the region, Mr. Pierre Embrun. During the meeting, there was talk of the efforts that are being made right now to rebuild, efforts to rebuild a lot of Ukraine's infrastructure. I'm talking here about infrastructure located in parts of the country that are not being intensely bombed by Russia. In your opening remarks, you insisted on how important it is to seize Russian assets for the rebuild effort. Canada quickly adopted a bill to seize Russian assets. In December 2021, the Minister of Foreign Affairs explained to us that she was going to present a request to the board to confiscate assets and to pay Ukraine the equivalent of the monetary value of those assets. This was said about a year ago. What news have you received from the Government of Canada with regard to its intention to confiscate Russian assets? I'm talking here about assets from the Russian oligarch Roman Abramovich in order to help with the rebuilding effort in Ukraine.
Thank you. Indeed, the rebuilding has already started, and as we was together with Minister Joly visiting also Chernihiv, which is an hour-and-a-half drive from Kyiv, and the communities which were occupied were crossing a big, like a 4-line bridge, which didn't exist 15 months ago, which was blown up and then quickly rebuilt just to provide the ability to people to come and go, the goods run from between the cities. So indeed, we tried to, the government is putting a lot of efforts to try to provide the basic needs, especially for those communities which have been liberated. One of the important things in the rebuilding efforts is demining, and I would like to thank you, Canada, for a robust support for our demining efforts. Ukraine is today one of the top countries in terms of the in terms of the land that have been contaminated by the landmines. In terms of the seizuring of the Russian assets, the Russian sovereign assets frozen in Western capitals are more than $300 billion. That's an important instrument as both signaling to Russia the seriousness of all the Western allies to support Ukraine's victory. It's also morally right to do and legally right to do. So this decision, we're stressing the importance of this. The same goes to Russian oligarchs, and that's probably about the update because that's a legal process. I think the Global Affairs probably would better tell the details.
Je crois que depuis le début,
Since the beginning, I've been saying that there is an error that was made. The error is that the West would not commit itself on the ground, would not provide us boots on the ground. I believe that this was carte blanche for President Putin to allow him to do whatever he wanted. In a press conference recently, representatives from 25 countries met and talked about the situation in Ukraine. The French President Emmanuel Macron said that he wasn't excluding the possibility of sending French troops on the ground in Ukraine. At the start, we thought that this was the result of discussions that happened that day, but we heard that many countries dissociated themselves from this commitment. Do you think that, am I bothering you over here? President Macron wanted to muddy the waters a bit and be ambiguous in a way that might stem the tide of President Putin's ambitions. Can you comment on that?
I can comment the way that, and emphasizing that Ukraine has the will, the courage of our people, and those who are now on the front line to fight. The thing we are missing is the enough military support to equip them and enough air defense to protect the civilians and the cities from not only Russian, now it's North Korean, ballistic missiles, hypersonic missiles, drones, and we can do our work as we showed and demonstrated both within the first months of the full-scale invasion, what we did in the Black Sea with the Russian fleet, and so on. But this is the crucial thing, is the stat support and supply of weapons to Ukraine, but it's also the interest of all the alliance, because Ukraine is in the middle between Russia with their ambitions far beyond Ukrainian borders and the NATO as an alliance.
Thank you.
Point of order?
Yes,
Point of order.
Mr. Chong.
Mr. Chair, since the bells are going, and normally the rules bind the chair to suspend the meeting for us to vote, I believe if you seek it, you will find unanimous consent for the committee to continue to meet, to hear from the ambassador, for the chair to suspend the meeting when the 30-minute bells are finished at approximately 10 after 6 p.m., to come out of suspension once members have voted on their electronic apps, and to continue the meeting at that point.
There unanimous consent? Excellent.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
We now go to Madam McPherson. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Thank you very much for being here, Ambassador. And I apologize for having to bring that motion or bring that information, that point of order up at the beginning of today's meeting. But as you've mentioned, the risk that we see with some of the gaps within our arms control mechanisms within this country, I think are something that we need to be aware of and we need to be looking at. And so I'm going to ask you some questions about that, actually, because I, like you, have a lot of concerns when we see Canadian goods being used by Russia. I visited Irpin and Kyiv in March last year. With your assistance, I met with the the Solomona Cats, a group of young people. I met 16-year-olds who are literally using antennas to demine areas so that Ukrainians can go back to their communities. I know that the organization Halo Trust, which we all know is doing really remarkable work there, trying to demine so that Ukrainians can go back into their communities. But we also know that there are loopholes in our arms system that allow goods like detonators to go through Kyrgyzstan to end up in the mines that 16-year-olds are using antennas to demine in Ukraine. I'm appalled that these loopholes haven't been stopped, and I'm wondering if you can talk a little bit more about what the impacts are of having Russia have access to over 100,000 detonators that were made in Canada to be used in Ukraine against the Ukrainian people.
Thank you. I think we need to all realize that first is at most, Russia cannot sustain in its military production without Western spare parts. So the second thing, that's because that's their need, their crucial need, they will try to find in other countries, to find intermediaries in trying to circumvent the sanctions. And we also need to be quite realistic. They are becoming very creative. So it's not only about the export ban and the decision not to issue the export permit. It's also we need to be quicker and smarter, and also with the collaboration with the industry, to work and, making preemptive measures. So, because it's okay, it's good we can investigate the thing which happened, but it already happened. This or that equipment is already in Russia. And it's not only about specifically using in the weapon production. As we saw with the Iranian drones, Russia copied the technology and now is able to produce their own. So there are much more like a long-lasting impact with this. Second point, it's not only physically the export control as it is. There could be some technologies which formally are not under the sanctions, which formally are not banned with the export control, but which are widely used in the Russian military machine. So that's why the decision, to extend this ban, not only for the formally like military stuff, but a lot of technology that could be potentially used, is of the great importance. And I think it should be the constant day-to-day work, and it should have the enough resources, efforts, and leadership to continue this fight. There is not an easy one-time solution to this. As soon we will figure out one thing, they will try to find another way. But this is of the strategic interest for all of us, to deprive Russia from the ability and also to protect technology not to end up in Russian hands.
Well, and I would say, one of the things that you mentioned earlier is that this is not a new thing, that this loophole has been allowing this to happen now for 2 years in Ukraine. We know that this committee studied this in previous parliaments. These loopholes exist and need to be closed, and the government has not done the work to close those loopholes. In fact, continuously says that this is a rigorous arms that we have a rigorous arms regime, when obviously we don't. We have a lot of loopholes that are not working, and we are not doing the work that needs to be done to make sure that that's not happening. It's very similar to, from my perspective, our sanctions regime, where we add people to the sanctions regime as if there's no work that needs to be done after that. And the actual execution of those sanctions and the enforcement of those sanctions is where Canada often falls down. I wonder if you could speak about right now how you feel about the fact that so many people have been sanctioned and there has been so many announcements on the seizures of goods when very little has been seized and nothing has been repurposed for Ukraine at this point.
If you allow, I will put here in two different things. First, the sanctions itself and its impact. And the second thing, it's about the seizuring of assets, because the seizuring of assets, when it comes to the sovereign assets, that's now the discussion among, first of all, the G7 countries and those countries who are holding the major portion of Russian sovereign assets, and Canada is not among them. So Russia withdrew their assets from Canada long before they start the full-scale invasion. And that's an important dialogue, and we value that Canada is supportive and towards the seizuring of Russian assets around the table with the other partners. In terms of sanctions itself, sanctions are working. The thing that Russia, through a lot of disinformation campaigns, is trying to spread the narrative that sanctions are not working, is exactly the right arguments that they are hurting Russian economy. Whether it's the military, whether it's the aviation. One of the first sanctions that have been done was the sanction towards Russian aviation. And you see how Russian fleet has been depleted, and many of those sanctions which are linked to technological excess, they have the influence as the time passes. So as the equipment is becoming older, there is nothing to replace. So Russian economy is degrading in a high speed. But they are trying to send the message that, immediately sanctions are not working, so, the discussion about the efficiency will raise up. No, I think we need to be...
Do you feel Canadian sanctions are working? No?
Considerably over time. It's almost 2 minutes over time. Thank you, Madam McPherson. So we go to the next round, and for this round, 3 minutes each. And we start off with MP Chung.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair. Just want to correct the record. I misspoke earlier when I said that Canada had been producing 3,155 millimeter shells a day. What I meant to say was that Canada has been producing 3,155 millimeter shells a month. So I just wanted to correct the record on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Chung, we now go to Mr. Epp, and you have
I'll take it.
2 minutes and
thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Your Excellency, for being here. I'm also going to thank the clerks, the analysts, and the Library of Parliament for the briefing notes. I was able to check the map that was provided, and the farms, of which I have small bits of evidence in my office at home where my grandparents were born, still lie behind Russian lines. And so this is a deeply personal issue for me. The Prime Minister was in Ukraine on the second anniversary and announced another $3.02 billion in support for the upcoming year. A press release also went out that will bring the aid totals to $13 billion since 2022. Can you confirm, is the $3.2 billion announced as part of the $13 billion, or is that in addition to?
No. It's a part. The biggest part of this is the loan to Ukrainian budget. This loan will, and we highly appreciate this loan. I think Canada started to support Ukraine and Ukrainian budget back in 2015. After Russia occupied Crimea, Canada provided the first loan to Ukraine to support Ukrainian budget, and Ukraine paid back this loan, including the interest even ahead of schedule in 2022. So now the biggest portion of support, this is the loans to Ukrainian budget to help the country and to help those millions of people who are suffering from the war, including the IDPs. And the other part is the military support.
Thank you. In your opening comments, you talked about the delay in fulfilling some of the total support, and you also talked a bit about the Western approach as being a bit drop by drop. So I'm going to explore a little bit Canada's obligation. Several questions, and I'll let you use the remaining time then. Are there any penalties for non-fulfillment on our part from the agreements? Secondly, we've announced 50 Canadian-made armor agreements in September 2023, NASM, surface-to-air missiles in September 2023, or sorry, January. November 22, assault rifles. Winter clothes were announced last year. My understanding is they have still not arrived. Can you comment, and to what extent are these delays in fulfilling our commitments hurting the efforts?
Thank you. Indeed, it's probably the situation that we face with many of the partners. If you ask, what's the timing we need many of those packages of the support, the first answer you will hear in Ukraine for yesterday, even the day before yesterday. And so the time is pressing. But sometimes it's also the restraints are coming from the producers, for their ability to produce the equipment, because most of that is the newly produced equipment that, that is here in Canada, the new jobs creating, but still it takes time. So specifically, as of now, I'm not in a position, I don't have the information with you, what kind of, specific equipment that was committed is already delivered or not, but of course we are in a constant dialogue, and my team was the D&D, because timing is of a great importance.
Thank you. We next go to Mr. Oliphant. You have 3 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Your Excellency. It's good to see you again. First thing I want to say is just a reminder and the reiteration, Canada's belief that this war will end, but it will end on Ukraine's terms. And I think with all G7 leaders, we have said that. And I think that Canadians of Ukrainian background and Canadians not of Ukrainian background stand united on that. And I hope that this will not be a divisive issue ever in this Parliament. Second thing I want is, how are you?
It's, I think, the most complicated question I personally getting, because usually it's the question of, for many people, of being polite. But, you can't say that you're okay when over 2 years, every day. I think the most scary thing for me personally is to wake up in the morning and read the news. Because each time that can be somebody very close to you. And in my personal family, we had the people who died on the front line.
We will stand with you and your family as well. I also want to thank you for your part in the Canada-Ukraine Strategic Security Partnership. This is significant. This is 10 years. You had a role in it. Personally, the embassy had a role in it. Our two governments had a role in it. I don't think we take credit for it. I hope to share credit with you, because I think this is incredibly important, that $3 billion, slightly more than $3 billion for 2024 is real, and it is a continuation of our commitment since 2015. The question I have for you is, Canada's commitment is unwavering. I believe Canadians' commitment is unwavering. And despite the political games we play, I believe the opposition's commitment is unwavering. I may get in trouble for saying that, but I really believe that, and we only get ahead if we do that and don't play games with this. Can you tell us if there's a role for Canada with other players in the world, with other allies of ours, near friends, far friends, the Global South, others, anything Canada can do to shore up Ukraine's war efforts?
Thank you. And first of all, let me also thank for the agreement to happen and the negotiations we had in such a short term for the amazing team of Global Affairs, which was led by Heidi Holland, and it was participants of the other departments. That was incredibly, amazing work that the team done in both in Kyiv, by the way. So one part of the negotiations were in Kyiv, so we really appreciate this. And it was not only very symbolic to have this agreement in Kyiv signed the same day when Russia started the invasion. It was signed on the February 21st. Together, Canada and Italy. Canada was the first. So the country who leads now G7 and the country who will lead G7 next year, standing together with EU presidency like Ursula von der Leyen, it was an important message to Putin as well, that we all united. In terms of the support with other partners, indeed, we are working, and our teams are working, whether it's the UN, whether it's the OSCE, whether it's the other international platform. I think the very important part of the world where we need to enhance, like the explanation, was probably different arguments for each specific country, but this is the Global South. And that's where, we can join further the efforts, whether it's the coalition for bringing Ukrainian children, whether it's about the enhancing or ensuring the food security, whether it's about the ecocide and the crimes against the environment, which Russia committed, including blowing up last year the Kakhovka water dam. So there are many of these angles and the arguments we can bring to the countries, including from the global south. And that's where I think we can further work together.
Thank you. We now go to Mr. Bergeron. You have a minute and a half, sir.
Merci beaucoup. Merci, Excellent.
Thank you very much. Thank you, Your Excellency. According to Le Devoir, a newspaper in Quebec, close to 60% of Canada's commitments have not been delivered yet. I know that you are very grateful for what Canada has been done to date, and I don't want to put you in a position that would be critical of the government of Canada, but Ukrainians need weapons. What needs to be delivered? What signals have you gotten from the government with regard to the delivery of assistance? I'm talking here about 800 rounds made in Waterloo. This was announced by the minister. Where are these rounds of ammunition? What's the situation at the moment?
Thank you. I think it's quite transparent in all of the democracies. So the list of the equipment that was committed to be supplied to Ukraine and those delivered on the website of DND. I'm not now in a position to comment in a really the percentage term, but each specific case. I think when it comes to, probably you mean the 800 of drones. As we understand, it will be delivered later in spring, but that's even if it's 3 months, that's a good time. When it's like another 12, 18 months, that's a challenging time. So this we are, pretty confident that it will come sooner.
Thank you, Mr. Bergeron. We now go to Madam McPherson. You have a minute and a half.
Very quickly, Madam Ambassador, Your Excellency. So that was a question about the speed at which goods are getting to Ukraine from the Canadian government. So I guess I have two questions for you. First of all, do you feel that they are coming in a timely manner? And what are the costs, I guess, of when they aren't being delivered in a timely manner? We know the air defense system has been promised, but there's no timeline on that. The other question I have for you, this committee would very much like to come to Ukraine. We would like to be able to show our solidarity and our support with you. Can you talk a little bit about what that would mean to Ukrainians if the Canadian Foreign Affairs Committee was to visit Ukraine?
Thank you. Of course, this is the biggest war that's happening on the European continent since the Second World War. And this war has so many dimensions, both on the military side, on the impact of civilians, on the impact of the global energy sector, the global food security environment. And there is no better place to learn and feel all the consequences of the war that's coming to Ukraine, visiting the not only Kyiv, but the other places, including those just to understand, what should be in the mind of the people. For example, putting 150 people in a basement for over a month with no food, with no water, and keeping them there. That was Russian soldiers did just an hour drive from Kyiv, the village of Yagidne, which we visited with Minister of Foreign Affairs. I think it's important that we welcome. We have a lot of delegations from many of the parliaments, from all of the continents. And of course, we would welcome much the delegation of Canadian members of the parliament to Ukraine.
Thank you very much, Madam Ambassador. That concludes our questions. We're grateful for your generous commitment of time, and thank you for your fulsome responses. I'd be remiss if I didn't ask you if there was any concluding remarks you would like to make before we adjourn this meeting.
First of all, thank you. Thank you for being with Ukraine for 10 years, because the war started in 10 years. If we look back what happened during these 10 years, Russia strategically lost on a global security. Russia is no longer the G8 member, each G7, and that was done with a significant role Canada played in that. While preparing to the full-scale invasion, it was easier because over 30,000 at that time Ukrainian troops have been trained. Canada stepped in and is supporting us, and I think the agreement what was signed in Kyiv, our strategic security cooperation agreement, is today laying ground on the different spheres. Not many of those we haven't covered today, but this is the cybersecurity. That is the issue on the security of the countries which does not have borders and does not have the distance. And we are the country who suffered a lot. We withstand a lot of Russian cyber attacks. And there are a lot of things, other things in this agreement which we will share as well. So we believe it's a mutually beneficial cooperation which will enhance the security of our both countries. Thank you.
Thank you. On behalf of every member of this committee, when I thank you for all the information you have provided us. The meeting stands adjourned, suspended for literally 2-3 minutes, just so we can allow other officials. Pursuant to Standing Order 1082, the committee will now proceed to a briefing on the current situation in Haiti. I'd like to welcome our witnesses. We're grateful to have with us here today 3 officials from GAC. First of all, we have Mr. Sébastien Beaulieu, the Director General and Chief Security Officer from the Security and Emergency Management Division. We have Madam Sylvie Bedard, the Director General, Central America and Caribbean Division. And we have Mr. Sébastien Seguin, the Executive Director for Haiti. Thank you for appearing before us. Am I correct in assuming that you have one opening statement? Okay, is it Madame Bedard? You will be doing it? Okay, so you have 5 minutes for your opening remarks, after which we will open to questions from the members. And please, not only when you're doing your opening remarks, but even when the members are asking you a question, if you could look over to me every once in a while to make sure that we're not going over the time allotment. All of that having been said, the floor is yours, Madame Bedard. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you. Merci, merci beaucoup.
Thank you. I'll be presenting these opening remarks. I have my colleagues here with us today, Sébastien Beaulieu and Sébastien Seguin. I'll be giving you an overview of the situation in Haiti. I'll also be talking about Canada's response to the situation, and lastly, about the situation faced by our employees and Canadians in Haiti. On February 29, the situation deteriorated significantly with gang attacks on essential infrastructure, causing the closure of the international airport in Port-au-Prince. On March 11, under the leadership of CARICOM, which is the Community of Caribbean States, the main Haitian political players reached an agreement and are currently working on forming a presidential transitional council, which will be responsible for appointing an interim prime minister and his cabinet. The announcement of the presidential Transitional Council is a development that we welcome. Canada has signaled that it is ready to work with Haitian stakeholders, with CARICOM, and international partners to support the full, transparent implementation of this agreement. Canada will continue to address the most pressing needs of Haitians.
Take a comprehensive approach. The Government of Canada strongly believes that the future of Haiti depends on having a stable and democratically elected government. Prime Minister Trudeau participated virtually in the March 11 meetings organized by the CARICOM, as well as Canada's ambassador to the United Nations and myself. Engagement by Minister Joly has also taken place to support the political dialogue and the upcoming multinational security support mission. The deployment of the multinational mission is critical to support the Haitian National Police to restore security. Canada is providing $80.5 million to the mission, and we encourage more international partners to contribute. Canada is also working with international partners to provide the Haitian National Police the necessary resources to stabilize the situation until the mission arrives, to be fully engaged over the period when the mission is active in Haiti, as well as to maintain law and order after the mission departs. Étant donné la situation sécuritaire incertaine,
Given the unclear situation with regard to security, on Thursday morning, March 14th, we temporarily reduced our staff at the Canadian Embassy in Port-au-Prince. This involved a reduction in so-called non-essential staff who have been temporarily relocated to the Dominican Republic. The operation was carried out by chartered helicopter. The ambassador remains on site, along with a team that will ensure our diplomatic commitment as well as security and consular functions. This has allowed us to maintain a safe, sustainable, and operational Canadian presence, and to fulfill our responsibilities to our employees, and to continue to provide essential services to Canadians on the ground from Haiti, the region, and our emergency response center in Ottawa.
Port-au-Prince is temporarily closed to the public, and we are providing consular services remotely. The security situation remains volatile. The state of emergency has been invoked on March 3rd. Flights have been cancelled since March 4th, and our travel advisory to Canadians is since October 2022 to avoid all travel. We're communicating with close to 3,000 registered Canadians via our messaging system. Since March 3rd, we've had just over 150 calls, some general inquiries, others related to immigration, and some to the departure options. As part of our emergency preparedness mandate, we are working on prudent contingencies with our domestic and international partners. We continue to monitor and assess the security situation very closely, and we continue to advise Canadians to shelter in place and to contact us for any assistance. This concludes my remarks, and I would like to thank the committee members for their attention and engagement on this important issue.
Thank you very much, Madam Bedard. Before we start off with questions, is it the will of the members to still set aside 15 minutes at the end for committee business? Yes? Okay. So for this round, we will have 5 minutes per round, and we start off with Mr. Hoback. You have 5 minutes.
Yeah, where to start? I guess, first of all, I want to thank you for the work you guys have been doing, the ambassador's been doing in Haiti. It's not an easy job, an easy place. I had a constituent who was stuck in Haiti who managed to get out this morning by helicopter, so some good news again. I'm also hearing stories of people walking across the mountain to get across into Haiti, taking serious risk to themselves. So do you see the ability to get people out of Haiti improving in the near future, or is this one of those situations where they're just going to have to buckle down and try to stay as safe as they can until things stabilize?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, for the question. The advice to Canadians currently is to shelter in place, to make sure that they have enough food, water, medicine for the forthcoming period. Unfortunately, I can't speculate as to how things will evolve, but be assured that my colleague, Madame Bédard, mentioned prudent planning. We are actively planning a range of options in case they become necessary. Thank you.
Looking back, we know this has been going on for a while. This has been getting worse and worse and worse, not just in a matter of a short period of time, but over a year, 2 years, basically, since 2022. What in the international community was dragging its feet in having some sort of reactionary process put in place to try to head this off before it got to such a bad place? Was the U.S. dragging their feet? Was it Canada? Was it other Caribbean partners? Why was it allowed to fester and fester and fester to this point?
Monsieur le Président,
Chair, I would say that nobody is indifferent to the situation in Haiti. Everyone agrees that we need to act now, and Canada has been very committed. Canada has done so much in Haiti. It's been doing a lot since the earthquake in 2010. It's been carrying out a lot of action since the assassination of former President Moïse. And it's apparent also in how it has responded to the breakdown of the security situation in Haiti. In the last 2 years, Canada has invested more than $380 million in humanitarian assistance and development, and supporting the Haitian National Police, in supporting the justice system. And we have recently made an $80.5 million announcement to the multinational security force that will be led by Kenya.
That's all good, and I want to compliment you on doing that. But in the same breath, the situation seemed to get worse and worse and worse. Even though we're adding more and more money at it, it seemed like we're not being impacted or impactive in how we're spending that money and how we're doing the training. And maybe I'll just stop there. I'm just looking forward. Like, there's a lot of Haitians who now live in Canada who are looking at their relatives. So what are we going to, providing we can get in there and provide some stability with the Kenyan force or how we see that happening or unfolding. But there's still going to be a situation, for example, hospitals, doctors, those types of things. Have we got military resources that are going to be stationed on a ship outside of Haiti? Are there other things being considered to provide that assistance like we did when the hurricane or the earthquake happened? Or, what game plans are being made to just provide that humanitarian aid once you do get a stable situation? Because there is going to be a lot of need and a lot of requirement for it.
Monsieur le Président, effectivement.
Chair. Yes, when I spoke of Canada's assistance to Haiti, I spoke of these $380 million in the last 2 years, and these include a lot of help for development and a lot of humanitarian assistance. We are constantly in contact with our partners on the ground. We are talking to them about the challenges with delivering this assistance. In the last few days, you may have heard that the United Nations have allowed a possible air link by using their helicopters. We can airlift medical assistance equipment to help emergency rooms on the ground. We are talking with our partners to see how we can continue to facilitate the delivery of essential products for Haitians that are facing a dire situation.
We have 4 seconds remaining, Mr. Hoback.
In regards to refugees, what's the Canada's plan there? Then we've got, again, lots of Haitian families looking at relatives. Are we going to allow temporary visas? Are we going to, any talks or discussions in regards to providing relief that way?
If you could respond in less than 10 seconds, please.
Sorry, he's tight with the watch.
There's a broader program in place for an immigration program for the Americas, and I understand that's being discussed in a parallel committee with my colleagues from Immigration Canada.
Thank you. So now we go to MP Chattel. You have 5 minutes.
Chair, I'd like to pick up off of where my colleague Mr. Hoback left off, because indeed I have many Haitians living in my riding. They have a lot of family members in Haiti. They have brothers, they have sisters, parents, and they're being told to shelter in place. People in my community want their family members to come to Canada. They are very concerned about their security over there. Can you talk a bit more about what discussions are ongoing with the Department of Immigration to help people in that situation? In addition, there have been sponsorship requests in the system, in the immigration system. There have been visa applications. There have been temporary applications for temporary stays. And do we have, what's the state of these discussions? Thank you, Chair. I'll be taking this question. Unfortunately, us at Global Affairs Canada and the consular response is our domain of expertise. That would be a better question for my colleagues at Immigration at RCC, and they're in another room right now testifying. This is important, and or rather, there is precedent for this. It has been done in other crises. You are collaborating with them. Both departments are working together. I would be glad to talk about this at our next daily interdepartmental meeting, and I'd be happy to send those questions along during that meeting. Perfect, thank you. Earlier, you spoke about the Presidential Transitional Council. That is being negotiated right now. What do you think about this? My constituents are quite worried. There have been negotiations that have broken down. The situation is very tense on the ground. Gangs are rampant. What are the key aspects of the agreement to ensure this council? Chair, Haitians have been working on implementing a political government, an entity for the last 30 months that would allow for a fairer system to be in place. There was an agreement on March 11th, and that was a step in the right direction. Unsurprisingly, its implementation remains challenging. The political groups on the ground there are not used to working together. Since that agreement was made on March 11th, a few days went by. I'm sorry, I'm just going to interrupt you. Chair, I have a very tough time hearing the answer provided by the witness. I don't know, when Stefan and I were talking, it seems like there's a lot of noise in the room. I really feel, and I'm sorry if people are behind, I would really appreciate listening, hearing the witness. May I continue? Thank you, Chair. Please, can you start over? Yes, no problem.
Some guidelines, 30 seconds maybe?
entendu, Monsieur le Président.
Chair, I didn't hear a thing.
J'essayais beaucoup, mais vous parliez.
I was trying to hear you were talking, and there's discussions all around me. Maybe I need to put my earpiece in.
If members could actually inform us right there and then, because we will have just wasted 5 minutes now. So are you willing to abridge your time to maybe 3 minutes, or?
Oui.
Yes, 3 minutes, please.
Monsieur le Président, ça fait
Chair, Haitians have been working on implementing a transitional government that would allow for fair elections for the past 30 months. The agreement signed on March 11 was a step in the right direction, a major one at that. It's no surprise that implementing this agreement remains challenging. The political groups that form the agreement and that signed it are not used to working together, and the agreement is shaping up step by step. Forming this transitional government is essential to ensuring that security situation remains, ensuring that the country remains safe. We cannot necessarily expect that the groups in Haiti will welcome the transitional council, so we need to make sure that the efforts maintain in the days to come. If we look at the medium term and the long term, Canada has done a lot of work to help strengthen governance in Haiti. Has been essential. It's been a cornerstone of the situation and the efforts made on the ground in Haiti.
Thank you very much, MP Chatel. We now go to Mr. Bergeron. You have 5 minutes.
Merci, Monsieur le Président.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, witnesses, for being with us tonight and for answering our questions. Mr. Beaulieu, I tremendously appreciate how you will be taking these questions over to the interdepartmental committee, and I would also appreciate answers sent back to this committee. It's no secret that Canada did not wish for Mr. Henry to remain president of Haiti. There has been a new wave of violence in Haiti. We don't know what will happen. History will only tell us. I have 2 questions for you. This transitional Council should have been assembled in a 24 to 48 hour time frame. That deadline has been exceeded. Should we be worried about this? Second question, how are the groups that were supposed to form this transitional council selected? We know that all these people don't necessarily get along, and they're not necessarily all that virtuous. Thank you, Chair. The latest chapter in this crisis started with the assassination of former President Moïse, and at that time, Canada took the time to talk with Haitians from all stripes. We need to listen to what Haitians are telling us, and that will better help inform our approach going forward. One thing that we learned from these consultations was the following. It's important to ensure that everything we do to help Haitians govern themselves come from Haitians themselves and be accepted by Haitians. In helping Haitians achieve better political dialogue, we have always maintained that we need to listen to Haitians. The discussions held in Kingston were done with Haitians. The airport in Haiti was closed at the time the Kingston town talks were held. And those talks, and Haitians participated in these talks virtually. They participated in all the talks leading up to the Kingston town meeting. Many of them submitted proposals for the agreement. The agreement of March 11 includes points that stem from various agreements that were sent in to be considered at the Kingston Town talks. And these points came from a wide variety of stakeholders. They reflect a lot of different points of view among Haitians today. Criteria were established by various stakeholders in order to guide the nomination process for the Presidential Transitional Council, and in order to ensure representation of each of these groups. And among the criteria, one of the criteria is not to have a criminal record, not to have committed a crime, not to have been sanctioned by the UN Security Council, and lastly, the final criteria, but last but not least, all candidates for the Presidential Transitional Council and all appointees need to support the multinational security mission led by Kenya. These were the criteria that were used. These were the criteria that informed the draft agreement, an agreement that was agreed to by the various stakeholders in Haiti. This is a question that everyone's asking themselves, what's taking so long, or what took so long for that agreement to come to pass? All groups have representation.
20 seconds, please.
Thank you, Mr.
Thank you.
President. Chacun d'entre
Each group, all groups need to, each group needs to define their candidate and choose them effectively. These are led by Haitians. and is not something that has been imposed upon them by the international community.
We now go to Madam McPherson. You have 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you very much for coming today and providing this briefing for us. I know when I asked that the committee undertake this briefing last week, it was because what we were seeing was such a deterioration, and the situation is so worrying and so dire at this moment. I was receiving some information from Médecins Sans Frontières. I know they were one of the only organizations that is still actively working in the country providing humanitarian support. And I recognize that you've talked about the humanitarian support the Canadian government is providing. I'm worried, first of all, is that support able to get there? Is there plans to work with those very few partners that are still able to work in that context? And how is that support, I guess, getting onto the ground, getting to the people who need it most of all?
Monsieur le Président, effectivement.
Chair, I spoke about the fact that a lot is being done by us to help with humanitarian assistance and development. The UN has called for $674 million in humanitarian assistance. We are encouraging our international partners to respond to this positively with significant contributions for Haiti. Given the circumstances, it is very difficult to get humanitarian aid to those who need it most. The international port in Port-au-Prince was shut down for many days. It was able to open temporarily, but the situation is very dire there, and it's one of the main points of entry for humanitarian assistance. Once it's complicated to get the goods received at the port, if they are received to the port, to various hospitals. This is because numerous roads are blocked. I said that one of the temporary solutions to this emergency that was made in the last few days, it was an airlift organized by the United Nations that would help to airlift medical equipment and assistance by helicopter. This is one solution for the problem that is being faced, and we are talking with our partners on the ground to identify other solutions. In a context like this one, Canada's support and the international community's support to the Haitian National Police, as well as their contribution to the Kenya-led multinational security mission, all of this is crucial. One of the objectives of this mission is to free up the roads and to protect critical infrastructure in Haiti.
Thank you very much for that. And I guess one of the other questions that I had for you, you spoke about meeting and speaking with Haitians and making sure that Haitians are the center of the solutions for Haiti right now, and how important it is that we are listening to Haitians. We know the history has not shown that there is a solution when it is not centered with Haitians. We know we have an enormous Haitian community in Canada of Canadian Haitians that, particularly in Montreal, I know Maison Légion is one of the groups or one of the organizations. Have you been speaking to Haitian Canadians? Have you been, what are you hearing from them on what they would like to see the Canadian government do more of?
Monsieur le Président, le Premier ministre...
Chair, Prime Minister Trudeau, Minister Joly have worked hand in hand and very hard with Haitians in Canada. They have been listening to the Haitian community in Canada. Earlier, I said that one of our guiding principles in responding to the situation in Haiti is to listen to Haitians. Another one is listening to the Haitian diaspora here in Canada. We are talking with representatives of the Haitian community, and we are trying to ensure the greatest diversity possible of representation. We are talking to representatives of various political groups, but we're also talking to representatives of religious groups. We're talking to the Voodoo community. We're talking to the Protestant community, the Catholic community. We're talking to civil society representatives, women's groups, girls groups, all of these groups. And it's this significant diversity of opinion that has been informing Canada's response to date.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much.
So that concludes the questions by the members. Allow me to thank you all for having made an appearance on essentially short notice. We're very, very grateful for your insights and your perspective on this issue. And that should conclude it. Thank you. So we will now go into committee business. There's only 10 minutes remaining. As you know, resources are only available till 7 o'clock too, but we'll try to switch over. We'll try to switch over as soon as possible. Thank you. Suspend. you.